Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, whether you're tuning in on the radio dial in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM. We welcome you all back to our show, as well as tuning in through our online affiliates around the world. We're glad to have all of you with us as well. I have someone that many of you already know because of the impact he's been able to have on music, but also, I think, on culture in general. We're excited to welcome James Mtume to the program today. He's not only an award-winning recording artist and songwriter, but an individual who's been able to use his public platform to not only inspire others, but I think also to motivate us, to push us all toward our own personal greatness. We'll talk to him about his musical influence, what it's been like for him to have the impact that he has, but also what it's been like for him to know that others are able to take what he's done musically as well as in life and use that as they move forward in their own lives. If just on hearing about Mr. Mtume, we'll tell you at the end of our segment how you can stay connected with him online. But Mr. Mtume, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Oh, man, thank you so much for inviting me, man. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Well, look, the pleasure's definitely on mine, and I mentioned you're being a recording artist and songwriter. I should also mention you're being a radio personality as well, and I think that really ties in so well to how you've been able to use your life and to use your platform. I mean, you have been able to not only influence people through music, Mr. Mtume, but also, as I said, through the messages that you share. What has that been like for you to reflect on your career and to reflect on the impact you've been able to have on others?
Again, I'm greatly flattered that, you would refer or make reference to an impact. I'm not always sure of that. All I know is, there's a lot of things that I contemplate and think about that I may make statements on that I think others just don't, but there's so many connections I have between art and politics. I feel both exist. But it's like two interpretations of the same color, just different shades.
Right. Right. Well, one thing that you have not shied away from, and that is being able to share your feelings on different things over the years, whether it's talking about the election and the impact of President Barack Obama in office, or even, the influence of others in music. Where does that courage come from? Because as you know, Mr. Mtume, today especially, people are afraid sometimes to rock the boat. They're afraid of being able to shake things up and going against the grain. Where does that come from in you to make sure that you have to be able to say what you mean and mean what you say, even though it may not be something people expect?
Well, I don't know if that's so much a choice as much as it is just a trait of personality. I don't think of it as courage. I think, again, you're being, I'm overly flattered, but it's like to not say or comment on the things that you see is like being fake, and it's like playing music that you don't believe in. I mean, there's so many. Right. I always say art is the highest form of intellect, and intellect is the highest form of art. So politics and political observations, to me, are as serious as the music, I mean, look, I came up, look at the cat. My mentor was Miles Davis. I mean, it don't get more serious than that, you know what I mean? And right. And in terms of my political persuasion, I was a political science major in college. I mean, that probably will put some kind of stamp on it. But, I just think, you make a very good observation, especially with artists. They think that they can't speak out on political and social issues. But, I mean, I don't know how you don't. You dig what I'm saying? Because you actually write from those things. And I think we were reflecting on something that you had mentioned before we went on air, a statement that I had made. I said, art is like the thermometer. Society is the thermostat. I mean, the thermometer only reflects the temperature. The thermostat sets it. So, if you look at different periods in the music, then you'll see that there was a period of like real strong political persuasion, like, James Brown, I'm Black and I'm Proud, Sly Stone, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself, or Stan, and many of the rock groups. And then kind of politics became like a scary word, and people shied away from it. And I think one of the things that artists did, especially musicians, by shying away from dealing with social issues, they've allowed this sterile environment that comes into play where, an artist is scared to make a statement. And as a result, the public stays dumbed down.
Right. Right. Well, I think if they look at what you've been able to do in the time that you've been able to do it, I think that's the other interesting thing for me, Mr. Mtume, is that, you have been able to do this even at a time when it was unpopular. I mentioned earlier about your being, of course, an award-winning recording artist. You've been able to work with some, amazing artists along the way. Songs that we hear today that people think are the original songs are actually samples of songs that you were able to compose and work on. Do you still have those wow moments as to not only the longevity of the music you've created, but also the impact that your music continues to make?
Well, I think the thing that I'm most gratified by is that the music was able to expand past, my generation and extend, into future generations. I mean, the most outstanding example of that was Juicy Fruit, which Biggie, sampled in the early 90s and, has been, sampled so many times after that. But the fact that young people come up to me now and comment, like that the music that their parents were playing, they grew up with, and never having heard the original, they hear the samples and they appreciate the longevity. That's all you can ask for as an artist, man, is that you wrote or you created a piece of art that extends past your life. I mean, look, I'm 70. Let's say I'm closer to the end than the beginning, but I can roll knowing that, the music will live past me. You can't ask for more than that.
That's so true. And I think that's something that more people, I think, hope that they would be able to say about themselves. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome Mr. James Mtume to our program today. We're talking with him not only about what he's been able to accomplish in music, but also in life. And this is not something you've been able to do in the United States, Mr. Mtume. You've been able to travel literally around the world. This year, of course, you were honored because of your recognition, that, especially with the Harlem Week this year, honoring your work. I think, so many times we forget those who helped to pave the way. I mean, when you hear, as you just mentioned, from the younger generation about what what you have done means to them, does that give you hope for what we still can accomplish, not only in music, but also in the world?
Well, I was never hopeless, so, I've always had that feeling. I just think sometimes, the weather gets a little cloudy. And there was a period in the music where I felt it got real cloudy. And what I mean by that, originality, and being, a voice that was identifiable became like secondary to sounding like somebody. I was very disappointed for a period in music where, everybody started to sound the same, and there was no more distinction. Because when I grew up, like I said, jazz is not my background. Jazz was my front ground. And the thing you always want to be is yourself. You always want to have your fingerprint or your voice. I was saying for a period there, I said if a guy like Prince came along a few years ago, nobody would sign him because he'd be too different. But that's what you strive for in art. I started calling a lot of the stuff I was hearing cookie cutter. Now that doesn't mean there wasn't great stuff happening, but a lot of stuff was the glorification of mediocre stuff, man. And brands, somebody sells a lot of product because of their name. Well, I didn't come up like that, man. And as a result, a lot of music, in particular black music, have been reduced to hit records, in the place of hit careers. I mean, you would wait for the next Isley Brothers, the next Parliament Funkadelic, the next Earth, Wind, Fire, the next Marvin Gaye. Now you got a lot of one-hit wonders.
Right. Exactly. That's so true. And I think, too...
I'm dealing with your questions directly, but, I'm flowing,
No, you definitely are. You definitely are. And I think it goes to, a bigger message, I think, that I hope our audience takes away, Mr. Mtume, and that is the importance of being not only true to yourself, but also kind of going back to what we said earlier about having the courage to realize that there's power in being yourself. There's power in being unique.
Oh, yes.
And you've been able to harness that, not only through music, but as I mentioned, you're being a radio personality yourself, being able to use the platform. I always encourage people, no matter what their platform might be, to be able to use it to not only, of course, the greatest good of others, but also to make sure that they're able, to inspire people along the way. What is it that led you to radio? What is it that led you to use that platform?
Well, I, like I said, I was a political science major. And I'm a child of the '60s, so I was in college in 1966, and I joined the political movement. As most young college students did. White, black, Latino, or Asian. There was a huge political movement in this country. And it drew from college students. So I've always had that affinity, for political observation. But also, man, I was an artist, man. And I just never made a separation between the two. I never really could understand why people felt you had to separate the two. Nowadays people say if you're an artist, don't make political statements that'll hurt your career. One of the things I'm also glad about is the creation of, universal access for information, like the internet, social media, blogs.
Right.
You experienced the joy of that, where people now have the independence, without worrying about somebody telling you what you can't say. Once you have that kind of control and authority over people, people don't grow. They stay, like I said, dumbed down. This past election is a great example of that.
Yeah, I think that's so true, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you have been able to use social media as well. I think it is one of the ways that people, I have to say that you mentioned this past election, and one thing I will say about that is that, definitely we see the power of social media with that, namely Twitter. Who would have known that so much news would be broken through tweets, in the world, and that is what it's so interesting, that instead of looking to a press secretary or looking for a press release, we're looking on Twitter, we're looking on Facebook to see what people have to share and to see what's happening. Do you think that also has been good for the way we find out and discover new artists, Mr. Mtume, that we're able to use those platforms and be able to allow ourselves to use our gifts that way too?
Absolutely. I always tell young people, man, this is a great time to be an artist, because, you can create your music, you can create and produce what you want to produce, press send, and it goes to the whole world. Remember, I came up in a time when if you weren't on the radio, you weren't on. There was no way to move your music if nobody could hear it. Today, you have access to the world. I'm happy to see the comatose state that record companies in, because they have far too much power. But I think this is a great time. But I did want to comment on what you just said. I thought it was extremely important, how we transmit information now compared to a newspaper or a magazine or a press secretary. I made the prediction that Trump would win. Now, I have no connection or any support for his views or politics. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I did say he was smart in terms of what he was doing. The Democrats were using an old schematic, hundreds of millions of dollars to buy ads. Nobody looks at political ads anymore. Especially the millennials and young people. They're not looking at, CNN. They're getting their news through the internet and through social media. Trump understood that. And by doing Twitter, he was able to bypass even, television news. But the danger in that is that politics now is not about your experience. It's about your name recognition. Yo, man, if one of the Kardashians wants to run for Congress, they'll probably win. Nobody is dealing with having experience. And I do think in this past election, the irony was you had a revolution happening in both parties. Bernie Sanders had a revolution happening on the left. Trump had it happening on the right. The only difference is Trump realized at some point that he was bigger than the party.
Yeah.
Bernie never recognized that. He kept looking at himself as a candidate. He was bigger than the party, but he couldn't take on the Clintons. He didn't think he could. And that was the only difference. Because I think the election should have been Bernie versus Trump, and you would have a very different result.
Wow. Well, so, I think it's so interesting that you bring that up because I mentioned earlier, one of the things I did in prepping for this segment, I watched, of course, different interviews you've done, different speeches that you've given. I mentioned earlier about what you had to say about President Obama. And one of the things that struck me about even during his time as president that you said, and it's up to you, Mr. Mtume, how much you want to go into this, is that how, this is a conversation I actually had with people in general, is that we have to be so careful. It's nothing wrong with respecting a person, but you still have to be able to know who you are and what you stand for. Do you also find that that's so important for young people to, there's nothing wrong with them finding individuals to respect and to want to say, okay, this person has done this, so maybe I can do this, but not necessarily losing oneself, so that you don't end up, in a place where you seem to be supporting something you don't, or being in a place where you are not really around things that you believe?
Well, I would, I don't mind addressing any quote that I said. Is it something in particular that you were referencing?
I think at the time the speech that you were given, basically saying, of course, about the fast-paced nature of the world that we're living in, about how really, campaigns or, elections, when someone's elected office, even though we say they're in for 4 years,
right.
Really they only have the 2 because you're already preparing for what's to come.
You were right, and I was saying, when I was growing up, I mean, the actual campaigns only lasted maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and that's how it is in most of the world. America is the only country where somebody campaigns for 2 years. When you win, by the end of your second term, you're gearing up to try to get reelected. The other thing that we suffer from is the influx of money and how much money you have to raise in order to run. You're talking about both parties having to raise, $1 billion or a couple of $1 billion. And that's insane. That's no longer a democracy, okay? That's a plutocracy. That's the mixture of money in politics. I mean, you can't run now without billions of dollars. And look what it has done to our politics. Most senators and congresspersons are millionaires, man. And most of them are lawyers. And remember this about lawyers. Lawyers fight to win. They don't fight to be right. So we're locked into this thing, and I don't believe that we really have democracy right now. And now we've moved into the stage where you elect people if you know the name. Now, the truth is, Trump has been in the political consciousness of America, or the cultural consciousness, I should say, for 30 years, since The Art of the Deal and his TV shows. So people don't really, if they don't know your name, they're voting for how you look. They're voting for if they recognize the name. So like I told you, we're in a dangerous period because experience now is a deficit. And that's insane, man, when you're talking about somebody running a country, man.
So true, and I think it's something for us all to be able to think about, especially going back to how we kind of began this conversation, Mr. Mtume, and that is about the importance of knowing who you are and knowing what you stand for and being able to articulate that and let that be something that the world is able to know, because that way you're able to build that platform for yourself, as you have been able to do through your career musically as well as, of course, in your activism. Again, everyone, Mr. James Mtume has been our guest for this segment. A great conversation with you, sir. We've been talking with him not only about his musical influence and what he's been able to do through music, but also what it's been like for him through his life to be able to show other people what's possible, but also to be able to share with them ways that they can be able to keep having that optimistic nature that he has as well. Now, we mentioned that Mr. Mtume is also online, so you all can be able to stay connected with him there. He has a website. It's jamesmtumeonline.com. It's where you all can go to stay connected with him. That's jamesmtumeonline.com. And you also are on Twitter, right, Mr. Mtume, at James Mtume Live, right?
Well, all this is, I got to be honest, all this is recent. My children, man, they've convinced me, look, man, you got to, be open. Because if you notice, there's not a lot of stuff on me online in terms of a lot of speeches or lectures. There are clips here and there, but, I decided to, be more accessible. And as a matter of fact, we're finishing up a episode of Unsung for TV One, And these are things I just said, well, at this age, it's important for me to transfer the information that I got from all the great, artists that I worked for and who raised and mentored me, man. And that's how information is spread, man. You got to pass the baton.
That's right. So true. Well, Mr. Mtume, really appreciate the time. And look, it goes without saying, you're welcome back here anytime. I look forward to having you back again, sir.
I would love to, man. You take care now.
Thank you. You do the same thing. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. If you all came in late, you missed part of the conversation with Mr. Mtume, don't worry. Thanks to our online friends, you all can catch the replay right after we go off the air. The link is already available through our social media sites. So head over to Facebook.com/Cyrus Webb or go over to Twitter.com/Cyrus Webb. If you click on the link there, you can listen to the show completely for free and share with your friends from there, too. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live today. You all make it a great one.